Sarkozy, they're getting it's catching up with
Yeah,
them.
it's a new world. Hopefully, you're heading towards one anyway.
Maybe. Hello, I'm John from Broadsheet. You're very welcome. Very honoured to have Dan Boyle with us tonight on Tomorrow Tonight. Uh, Good evening, Dan.
Good evening, John. How are you?
Uh, Dan's a Green Party councillor and Broadsheet columnist. Dan, you had a column today concerning, well, kind of two things: the Ringaskiddy incinerator, and you kind of segued then into the climate bill.
Yeah, well, I was trying to get across that there's a big battle ahead. Is still that there were a couple of encounters I had in relation to the incinerator. One was that the High Court made a surprising but welcome decision in relation to a Board planning decision on the basis that a member of Board worked for a firm that was working for the firm making the application, and in the past that hasn't been taken as seriously as it should have. It's another court hearing to follow about whether it's going to get squashed, but people are believing it'll probably go back into the process, which is slightly disappointing. It is a new board and the individual isn't there, but it does prolong it a bit further. And then I went to a webinar, or I attended a webinar the other day, where there was a spokesperson for the company who was using an awful lot of green speak to justify what they're doing. And they were calling themselves waste to energy. They were saying they were circular economy. They were talking about district heating systems, and it was all to obscure what they do, which is they need waste to be created to burn it up and create a lot of carbon. And we're going to get a lot of that, despite the climate change bill, I think.
Yeah, the line that struck me: families have been reared during the time that this campaign has been
20 years. 20 years, yeah, and you'd see it in some of the pictures. I mean, it's I know one who's the public does the PR for Cork Harbour for a Safe Environment, and I remember the original protest, and her daughter has recently got a degree. So,
hilarious. There's parallels with the pool bag incinerator in a sense, because
there is, but pool bag was even more insidious in the sense that we went in with the expectation that we could influence it in 2007, and in the interregnum between us coming into government and the old government still being in place, the then Dublin city manager signed a contract which obliged the state to pay for any additional waste, or to pay for the additional waste that wasn't created, to justify the economic value of the incinerator. It was quite appalling.
Dreadful. And it left, you had a minister from, like, it was in John Gormley's constituency, wasn't it?
On constituency. And I mean, as a minister of the environment, you can't interfere with planning decisions or anything like that. But the thing was, the Dublin city manager made a decision on behalf of him and the state, which was really shocking at the time.
Amazing. Tierney, wasn't it?
It was Tierney. It was John Tierney.
Then went on to run Irish Water.
Full of irony.
And visually, it looks pretty much like the pool bag one.
Yeah, I mean, basically, it's a shed with a funnel coming out of it, and it's a big furnace inside. That it's a monster that has to consume as much waste as possible to justify it being there. It certainly isn't a solution to waste management. It's presented as being it, and the only way they try to justify it is that energy gets created, but you can only create the energy if you create the waste, which is a bit of a contradiction in itself.
Yeah, I mean, they have to be. It's like a steam train or something.
Yeah.
And if it's not fed, it costs them, or it costs us.
Garbage is the new coal, as far as they're concerned.
Yeah. Okay. And I don't really want to go into the climate bill too much with you, but was there something regarding fracking that?
It's about how it's being dealt with. There's going to be an amendment at committee stage about licensing, new licenses for oil and gas. That's going to be part of the new law. The fracking thing is a bit more difficult in the sense that that has to be worked out with the EU in terms of restraint to trade and stuff like that. But the LNG plant that's planned or had been planned for Tarbert and Kerry, that needs a particular policy position that is going to be articulated as well in coming months. But the climate bill itself is a governance thing. It's not it's not a bill to make sure that all nasty environmental things are dealt with at once.
No,
It's about the carbon emission limits and how they can be tackled on a legal basis up until 2050. And it does tick most of the boxes, and I'm happy with the response that the NGOs have been given over the last couple of days in particular.
Right. And the third thing, just before we get into the papers, the Hazel Chu matter issue.
Yeah, again, I suppose it comes down to governance, both of the party itself and us being a party of government. Hazel wants to achieve political office, and she feels that her background, her experience, she's obviously a very talented woman. She's done a very good job as Lord Mayor of Dublin. She should be considered to run for offices like this. It's a bit academic in that winning the actual seat is very difficult because, having been a senator myself, it's not the proudest part of our constitution. It is essentially a rotten borough. And the ability to be elected is very compromised by whether there are voting blocks available for you to allow you to be elected. And I don't believe that situation exists. And just even running as an independent candidate sends out a whole series of different messages that I don't think can be delivered on. But I mean, she's got the support of 9 people to sign her nomination papers, 6 of whom are in the parliamentary party, and she's on the ballot paper. So we'll see what comes of the situation.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Does he, as a leader, Eamon, is he a firm hand, or is he like, my door is always open? What sort of leader is he in that?
Well, I suppose there's a whole lot of things going on. Eamon is a friend, a colleague, someone I've worked with for a long time throughout my political life, and I think he's achieved enormously, not least with the climate bill this week. But I suppose people interpret who you are by different perspectives and their own experiences of you. Some people think he is too hands off. Some people interpret that as being standoffish, which he isn't. But right. And that creates a whole different series of personal perceptions and relationships that are difficult.
How would he tackle this? I mean,
I think his inclination is to let it run. I mean, right. He feels obliged not to support Hazel because we secured the election of Pippa Hackett before the general election as a senator by getting agreement from other parties not to contest the election, and having them not contest now. Then, he feels an obligation of not contesting now. So it's the motivations of people, I think, are utterly different in these situations. And I don't. It's got nothing to do with Machiavellian approaches, and that's the thing about the Greens. The Greens are utterly un-Machiavellian.
Well, that's to a degree.
To a degree. Except for me, of course. Yeah.
I mean, maybe I'm being naive, but I know we think the Lord Mayor, those roles are kind of, just wearing a chain for 12 months or whatever. But it's quite, in fact, in Cork as well, it's sort of cherished, isn't it? I mean,
it is. I mean, strangely enough, it's a Victorian affectation, the title Lord, but because it exists in protocol terms. Only the president is deemed to be a higher status within the cities themselves. So if there's any civic event, political event in Cork or Dublin, it's the president, the Lord Mayor, the Taoiseach, any government ministers. It is a relic of all decency, right?
But yes, I mean, it's sort of it lessens that role now in the eyes of perhaps millennials and whatnot. They're probably thinking
it's kind of the position that Mary Robinson found herself when she finished a few months before her term finished as a president. So that's a risk that Hazel is taking by putting herself forward for another political office. It's something that Paul McAuliffe did, but I think in general, it's just a general election is a bit different as opposed to a by-election situation, I'd imagine.
Yeah. Anyway, let's get on. Sure. Cabinet mulls ending 5 kilometre limit.
It's hard to know which way the cabinet is thinking. I think there are a lot of alternatives there. It increases the number of people you can and should meet, the actual kilometre limit, the idea of regional lockdowns. I think everything is still on the table. The figures are still worrying. We're still talking about 500-600 people on average. They're not going to dissipate that much by April 5th. The R number is between 1 and 1.3. But the positivity levels are decreasing. And in European terms, well, we're stubborn in a kind of a stagnant kind of level. The rest of Europe is going up quite significantly. They seem to be experiencing what we experienced in January and the like. So we just have to be cautious. I don't think the circumstances allow us to open up that much, but I would hope the advice is that we can open up differently, and click and collect seems to be on the table, an increase in construction of some type, and I think people have to be given slivers of light to see there's a direction we're going and that hope can be reached. A lot depends on the availability of vaccines and how fast we can vaccinate people. They're talking about 1 million being available by the end of June. Yeah, that there's a big question mark about it. The Novavax, which is made in Britain, which I think will probably come to another paper, is suddenly not being made available to the extent that people thought it might be because they're arguing over contracts. But I'm still a glass half full person. I think we're looking at hopefully summer and early autumn being over most of it and most people being vaccinated. But you can never tell because there is a race on. There may be stronger variants that get created, and we have to be cautious that we don't expose ourselves to that.
Yeah. I was going to actually mention, you didn't see the RT Investigates tonight, Dan.
I heard it, and it's truly shocking. I think they do a good job, RT Investigates. It's when I was, I came across a lot of cases against the state in the 1990s as a councillor and before he was elected to the Doyle in relation to autism and the state's approach to it. There was the O'Donoghue case, which was very significant, tends to get forgotten about because it led into the Sinnott case. And what the programme today is saying that the state seemed to be doing almost a dark ops operation on the families and the children suffering with autism to make sure that the state's case was as strong as possible to question the validity and the sincerity of the families and the children themselves, which it was an attitude that existed. Yeah.
Profiling their maybe personal peccadillos or,
Yeah, and a lot had to do, I think, with the philosophy, certainly then, of the Department of Health. And I think, at least now, with this government, and it's too early to say how effective it might be, but disentangling disability from the Department of Health and putting into a separate government department might be part of the process that changes that, hopefully.
Maybe, yeah. This practice, though, it's completely unethical and probably illegal, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's probably questions for the IMAO and stuff like that in terms of GPs being asked for and supplying information and not informing the families themselves.
And they were playing both sides, weren't they? They were dealing with the family.
Yeah, well, I suppose they were agents of the state in the sense that their income and the state probably used that as a lever as much as anything else. You work for us, you give us this information, more or less being implied, I would have thought.
Yeah.
But it was in an age before GDPR, but it was still an appalling way to trade any individual's personal information.
It's just unreal. A lot of this kind of stuff coming out, isn't there? It's very...
It is. Well, you'd like to think it's coming out because we're maturing as a country and we're dealing with things better, but there will be further scandals, and whether we learn from this situation is the real question.
This is just another the AAI review of incomplete adoption.
Yeah, I think some of that is logistical. We record keeping in Ireland and incidents in the past make it harder to follow through on a lot of these things, but to the extent that they can be, I hope they will be. You know, there's certainly been an improvement in record keeping, but it makes it so much harder that a lot of these records were either deliberately destroyed or have been badly handled in the past, that they're not available to the people who need them.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people in across the world
Yep.
trying to find out. We have a guy talking to him tonight, Frank Breheny, and when he went looking for his mother's birth certificate, there were people behind him, English people, doing the same thing. You know,
Oh, yeah.
it's there's a lot of it now. You know, they're second generation, third generation people from kind of Cuban adoptees and whatnot. This is the Irish Sun.
Oh, look, it's very difficult. I remember growing up in the States. The person I would have hung around with as a neighbor, and his parents came from Ireland. His mother from Kerry. His father from the Midlands. Subsequently, learned that his mother was his aunt, and he had been adopted from Ireland, County Kerry, to live a different life in the United States because of the Ireland that existed in the 1960s.
Did he ever find out?
He did find out his aunt, his mother, died of cancer at a very young age, 38 or under the age of 40, and he found out then. And from what I've known of him, subsequently, he did have a subsequent very difficult life. You know, how does anyone deal with these kind of situations?
Yeah, this is it. They've forgotten about me. Still no vaccine for Sarah in '98.
That sounds very strange. That sounds like an administrative cock-up. I mean, if they're dealing with the oldest people first and working their way down, and they're still in the late 70s, as far as I know, in who they're giving vaccinations to. My mother is 88, and she got her second vaccination last Tuesday week. So,
and how was she after it?
Well, she didn't have a reaction to either one, surprisingly enough. No, she spent her working life as a nurse, and when we were growing up and getting sick, we never got any sympathy for her. It was a bit like that knife scene in Crocodile Dundee. Her attitude was, "I deal with real sick people."
Oh, right, yeah. That's not a knife. This is
no, this is it.
Yeah. Well, poor old this great grand.
98. It's not acceptable. It's
no.
Well, hopefully, it's the reportage. We'll see that it's corrected tomorrow. I hope. Yeah.
Amazing. Great grandmother, age 98.
Yeah, some age.
Yeah, fantastic. The Echo. Your local. Avoid house visits.
Yeah, it's a strange headline and story for Cork, because Cork and Kerry are doing quite well relatively to the rest of the country.
Yeah. I have to say, the Echo was kind of very, I don't know, finger wagging at kind of young people, and and socializing and all that.
Well, that could be its readership. It wouldn't have a young readership. It would have a very it would have an established readership who are older and getting older, I think, so they probably try to reflect that, I think.
Yeah. Sorry, is that your phone?
No, it's some kind of message coming through on the internet. It's
all right.
WhatsApp, I think.
Solicitor Frank Buttimer and his daughter Aoife Buttimer was welcomed at the court. She was welcomed at the court as a solicitor, I guess, or a barrister.
Yeah, well, Frank Buttimer is nationally famous. He's the solicitor for Ian Bailey, for instance, and his practice, who I presume his daughter works for, is one of the practices that most avails, not so much avails, but makes themselves available for free legal aid services. So
right.
Has quite a client base.
Okay, and she's a solicitor, not a barrister, is it?
Seems like he's a solicitor. So,
vaccine passports are just the start of the new biosecurity state. I'm not sure who's saying that, but I would have to agree with that. The Daily Telegraph: Williamson condemns threats against Mohammed teacher. This is over the cartoon.
Yeah, it's a strange one. I mean, Muhammad lived in 600 AD. I mean, what does he actually look like? But the thing was, it sounds like a provocative action. So it's a tenet of faith for Muslims, and it sounds like it was an action to provoke. So these things are never cut and dried. So it's on two levels. I mean, for Muslims, it's an important thing for them, whether you show images or not. Some religions don't believe in
Yeah,
statues and graven images, but
yeah. And
for
they
people who don't, it's
then
not important.
and then they then look very, very extreme, don't they? Oh, it's only a cartoon. What, get over it. But as you
Yeah.
say, it's great reverence in terms of uh, their faith. Uh, like we had a cartoon about the angel Gabriel the other day, which is quite kind of certainly if it was the Muhammad, it wouldn't have. We
Yeah, and then I could be wrong, but I mean because Islam is an Abrahamic faith. It's I think there are references to archangels in the
yeah, there
Quran
is
as well.
actually. Yeah. Somebody actually mentioned that and said, "Well, don't be so cool with it." But again, yeah, it's almost 30 years since Salman Rushdie. Amazing, really, to think that.
Good gosh, yeah.
That's when it kind of all kicked off. This stuff. Pub check strategy to make young people seek vaccine. This is going to be presumably, if you haven't had a vaccine, you can't have a pint.
Yeah, it's again strange story, strange headline. Even in the UK, with their access to so many doses of the vaccine, I don't see people under 40 being vaccinated in a hurry, to be honest, so there'll probably be a cutoff point about people of a certain age being vaccinated at all. Children under 18, I don't see being vaccinated, for instance, and things. So it's there's going to be a long period of vaccination, and probably by the time people get vaccinated in most countries, including the UK, you're probably going to go into a booster shot situation on an annual basis, like the flu.
Well, that's it. Yeah, that isn't that. Once you've had the first one, you're in this kind of like, I suppose, like an addict. She's having a very bad first year in charge, Ursula, I must say.
Yeah, well, I think in terms of both decisions she was trying to make, both in terms of the Northern Ireland Protocol and the threat to withhold components of the vaccine from the UK, it seems that she was checked by Angela Merkel in both circumstances. Yeah. So as a German, who has been made president of the commission, that must be particularly embarrassing that within her own country, her own government were checking her that way.
Extremely. Were you following that story about Strenz, that a colleague of Merkel's who died on a plane to?
I was curious. Yeah, I mean, she was 53 years age, apparently. She was in Veradero in Cuba, so it was obviously a personal holiday.
Yeah.
I spent a few days in Veradero. It was quite nice, but it's I preferred Havana, I must admit. But I think Veradero is the place where where not only foreign people go for their holidays, the type of sun holidays that you get anywhere in the world, really, but it's where Cuban doctors are given a free holiday every year in lieu of the fact that they don't get paid the wages that are found in other countries. I found it a fascinating place. I had great conversations with Cuban doctors there.
Where on the island is it? Or
it's not too far from Havana. It's about 25 kilometers, I'd say, from Havana. Yeah.
Interesting. And it's sort of like Daca's in the Russian, the Russian.
Yeah, look, it's like it's food and drink sort of thing included, sort of thing. And I must admit, I found it a bit hot. I think it was 35, 38 degrees Celsius when I was there. So it's not livable, really.
Did you like Cuba?
Yeah, I went as much out of fascination as anything else. It was a curious holiday. We didn't have a Cuban ambassador there, but I did get on very well with the charge d'affaires, and I told her I intended going on a family holiday out of curiosity. And when I was there, they sent around a car to take me to the Politburo, where I was lectured to for 2 hours about the EU's policies on the Cuban embargo. and my daughter, God help her, who must have been about 10 years old at the time, she was asked to come along to the Young Communist League for the
That'll learn you. And
This is
do they pick you up in a vintage car at least?
no, it's a
No.
standard thing. But yeah, the vintage cars are interesting. I mean, the environmental disasters, but I mean, they added to the character. There's no doubt
Yeah,
about it.
it's Eamon Ryan's Dante's Inferno for
This is
him.
it.
The emissions. Pubs could ask punches for blood tests.
Yeah, well, I think they're going to kind of float a lot of ideas, but I think the idea of a certificate is getting hold. But I think that's probably a tick box thing, and it's probably it's not going to be like an identity card or anything like that. But they may yet go down that road. Who knows?
Yeah. Future PM probably brand.
It's hard to know. I mean, they're so obsessed about the Union Jack these days. You can see it all going badly wrong for them, and they've made it pig's ear, Scotland. You know, the smear campaign is utterly been defeated there, and it looks like Sturgeon is going to romp home in the elections.
Yeah. I feel sorry for Salmon though, in a way. You know, I mean, I do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was a patsy in terms of being used by the Tories in particular. You know, it's
Yeah, maybe.
But ultimately, the women who made their original complaints, who were used as a political football in itself, you know, it's a
absolutely
shocking situation.
Yeah. NHS pledges 96 million to make childbirth safer. Jet Express. You can't stop us. We will all get jabbed. Okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, the figures that they're quite stark, you know, regardless of the ham-fisted attempts by van der Leyden. The fact is that 20 million doses have been exported from the EU to the UK, and nothing has been exported from the UK to anywhere, you know. So, you know, most of the UK's program has benefited from drugs that have been produced in the EU. And they're trying to accuse the EU of engaging in vaccine nationalism. It's utterly bizarre.
This is part of a trend, I think, with Macron. He's sort of anti-EU at the last.
He's got elections next year, so so he wants to be both ways, I think, and it's hard to know which way it's going to end up. Le Pen is riding high in the polls again, but it could be just as well that Macron gets replaced by someone like Michel Barnier, for instance. He can come out of nowhere and prevent an alternative as well.
Yeah. The Economist has got a Pink Floyd esque.
Yeah, it's. I mean, we don't see the article, but I presume it's that science is the new religion. You know.
This is it. India deals blow to global COVID fight by blocking vaccine exports.
Bizarre sub-editor heading, I would have thought. Like, I mean, you would have thought that a country of 1.5 billion people needs all the vaccines it gets, you know. So, global economics might demand that other people have afforded them, but I would have thought the medical situation demanded that it's also given to Indian people, you know, access the drugs nearest to where they're being made. It should be the principle.
I don't understand that one of our biggest exports are pharmaceuticals, and the biggest part of them are vaccines, but we don't do the vaccine for them. We don't have
the plants have been dedicated to other purposes. I mean, Pfizer, who seem to have developed the best vaccine in Cork here.
Yeah,
it's their plant for making Viagra.
They don't.
It seems a strange sense of priority.
Yeah. They didn't suspend production of a Viagra to take over.
Well, suspend might be a difficult word, maybe.
Yeah, okay, there's too many puns going up. This is hilarious. Well, not for.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it says a lot of things about the scale of the shipping and stuff like that. The size of the Suez Canal. I made a joke about it on Twitter the other day that when it was diagonal and blocking up the whole canal, that. It's the perfect metaphor for modern life, you know. we have all this infrastructure from getting A to B, and it can be blocked in a second, just like that. You know?
Yeah, and then we're waiting on a JCB to take us out.
And I mean, there's a load of memes about this that the people are giving a name to the bulldozer, they're giving a name to the ship. Like, for instance, the one I saw was fiscal policy for the digger, and climate change for the ship sort of thing.
Okay. So, I must say though that like it's a little unfair because a bigger digger wouldn't make any. You know what I mean? Like it's
No, no, no.
a little bit of it's a small area. They don't need to rip up the planet.
Well, maybe they should have called the OPW. The OPW is great for getting diggers into the middle of rivers and causing untold damage.
Oh, controversial on that scorching denunciation of OPW. We leave it. Dan, thank you very much for.
Thank you, John.
Hopefully, we'll
Talk
see
you
you
soon.
next week. And thanks a lot.
Hopefully.
Dan's column is on the site currently, and thank you very much for joining.